Fukasaku's work is very much like the American films of the 70s that either may or may not have been influenced by them. The camera's constantly moving. The action is visceral. He tries to put you in the middle of the action. He very often it goes from handheld, very visceral filmmaking into a kind of operatic style, and which is extremely unusual. He mixed styles, all, I believe, in an attempt to deeply immerse the audience in the experience of the story. You feel as though you are inside the frame rather than outside the frame looking at a painting. You're not outside looking in. You are often very much within the frame. And that's a style that the filmmakers of the 70s picked up and sort of ran with. French Connection could very easily have been done by Fukasaku. And I was never thinking about his work when I did the film. I was trying to tell that story. But the visceral approach to the story, I know it wasn't just inspiration. I had seen his work and I saw how it was useful in telling a story like that, a crime story, as he would put it. It was useful to have the camera constantly following the people, and more importantly, to not be making any judgments about these characters. He wasn't worried about happy endings. He didn't have to redeem the good guys. He didn't have to say that the good guys triumphed at the end. And that was a profound influence on me.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Choose a side in a Clone Wars.
Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan. And in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to another Clone Wars, where two similar pieces of media clash to be crowned champion. Two go in, and only one comes out. And it's Yakuza month. Finally, we finished Samurai month. It's done. It's been laid to rest. The sun has set on Samurai month, and we are back talking more Japanese cinema, but we're going in a more Godfather, Goodfellas, Scarface direction. We're looking at the Japanese mafia specifically in this month of podcasts. So there's lots of interesting stuff to discuss and cultural differences between, organized crime. It's always really, really interesting. I found it a fascinating thing. And you guys voted for it as well. You voted for this specifically. So I am here once again with my very own assassin, the assassin of many a movie. Angry Andy Reviews.
Hello, I'm back.
You're back once again. And we are here for another Clone Wars to compare two very similar movies in the Yakuza genre. Have you seen many Yakuza films before this?
Not really. I've got to be honest. I watched one a couple of years ago with Jared Leto, or Leto, however you want to pronounce it. I don't really care.
Everyone's favourite actor.
Oh, yeah. And I hated it. It was called The Outsider, 2018. It was a Netflix film. And, I absolutely hated it.
Was it another, the white dude is better than the Japanese dudes at being Japanese?
Kind of. Not really so much. It was, again, it was like sort of like trying to play the fish out of water thing. But
okay.
He very emotionless in the film, and it's like watching like a stoic vampire just pissing around.
Well, he's going to be a vampire, a living vampire, in fact, very soon when Morbius comes out, which I am not looking forward to because it looks shocking.
Yeah, no, it does. It looks absolutely terrible. I'm not going to lie. I want to watch it. I do want to watch it because I'm an old Spider-Man fan from when I was a kid. So all these villains coming through in their own movies, yeah, I'm desperate to watch it, but I don't know. I thought there's just something about it. And this is my thing with Venom as well. I know we're going off track already, aren't we?
Yeah.
Which is typical of us, but
Not even begun.
it's my thing with Venom is just it looks a bit cheap and nasty. And the trailer for Morbius, whatever, looks cheap and nasty. It just looks cheap.
It looks
of the modern day, isn't it? We've been given so much high quality, high tech CGI fests, and yeah, I don't know.
It looks bland. It looks bland and dull. And it looks like every other vampire film I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Since 2000, since fucking Underworld or something like that,
Yeah.
they all look the same. Every single one.
The problem is like they have no confidence just to play it simple with vampire films anymore. Like, oh, I was bitten by a vampire, now I am one. No, they go through this rigmarole of, oh, it was a test, and now I've been infected because I walked through this plasma wave thing, and oh God, I woke up and I was inside the land of vampires. What? Just go back to the basics of having been bit by a vampire bat or something. In the trailer, he's stood in some kind of device, isn't he? And then they're all flying around him like Batman, and it's like, oh, whatever. Just go back to basics. It's probably in the comics, but I can't really remember too much. But just do the basics.
Yeah.
Bring it back to basics and then focus on character.
We'll see. Like I always found it interesting that he was a living vampire, that he was a scientifically created vampire, as opposed to like mystical. Yeah, I'd like to see the kind of that play off the kind of old school vampire and this new vampire. I'd like to see that, but again, I don't know if we'll get that. I don't know what they're going to have to do.
That's my only worry with the Sony movies is that they play with the origins. So it kind of works, kind of sticks to what we know and love, but at the same time, they just throw it out the window.
Anyway, let's get back on track.
What were we talking about? What are we here for?
Whatever you want. So we're going to...
Star Wars. Star Wars is really good, isn't it?
I like Star Wars. But we're here to do the Ewok Adventures. No, we've done that. Thank God. We've done that. Never again. Never again. No, we're going to compare two of the kind of prominent work of the director Kinji Fukasaku, who directed Battles Without Honor and Humanity from 1973, which is a big franchise in itself. And we're also going to compare that against Graveyard of Honor from 1975. The reasons for the comparison, they're both directed by the same man. Both based apparently on true stories or real life memoirs, diaries, or reports from a newspaper, released within 2 years of each other, both set in post-war Japan. Both titles contain the word honor. Both are considered classics in their genre and changed the entire trajectory of the modern Yakuza film. And both films have a faux documentary style about them. So it's kind of like they're filming it as it happens, which is not true, but it works as a kind of framing device for both of the films. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Before this podcast started, you'll have heard one of the big name directors in Hollywood, William Friedkin, talking about how much he likes the work of Kinji Fukasaku. He's the director of French Connection, The Exorcist. He's a massive fan. Not only that, you got Tarantino, who's a huge fan of this director and his series of films. Even uses the music from Battles in Kill Bill, as Oren Ishii, who I talked about with Rasheen, comes in with the Crazy 88, and you hear
there's loads more references throughout that film as well, like some of the style, like the way the blood splurts and people losing limbs and whatever. It's very much taken from these films.
Absolutely. And we spoke about Akira Kurosawa last time, and like Fukasaku's style is so different from Kurosawa in so many ways. We were talking about it just before we started recording. But you spoke about Tora, and I realized that it's Fukasaku who took over from Kurosawa. And
that's how inexplicably linked. So obviously, when they were filming it, the studio didn't like Kurosawa's style, so they wanted something more in like that other end of the spectrum, because that's what it is with Kurosawa, and then these films, they are so opposite. It's like you go from grand opulence and minimalistic acting and small moments of character to these films, which is literally just like it's all tightly compacted, and yet in that small space there's just fucking shit going off all the time. And whenever it stops, it's only for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then oh god, it explodes again. Came with it's dialed up to 11 all the time. It drops to about 5 for 30 seconds, and then it's up to 11 before you even realize what's happened, which is a good thing, but also a very bad thing as well.
Yeah, these new battles especially introduced a new style of Yakuza film, because before this they were known as the Ninkyo Iega, which translates roughly as chivalry films. So they were criminal. Yakuza were depicted as criminals, but they had like a Bushido samurai code of honor, kind of honor among thieves. So they would always be, they were torn between their duty and what they wanted, their personal feelings towards things. But these films introduced the Jitsuruko Ige, which was the actual record films. So these are, seemingly more realistic, more historically accurate, and more violent. The Yakuza are more treacherous. They only really follow their code when it suits them, in regards to being a criminal and the criminal enterprise. So this was very much a huge kind of shift in the way that the Yakuza were represented. And there's no like good guys in these films. They're all there's like, again, we've talked about it before, kind of moral ambiguity. There's not even really ambiguity. It's just bad people.
There's literally no moral ambiguity in these films whatsoever. There's no redeeming features in any of the characters. Even more so, Battles Without Honor, maybe a little bit, but Graveyard of Honor, there is not a shred of decency or redeeming qualities about any of the characters. They're all terrible people, and they all deserve everything they get.
100%. So we viewed these films. They are currently available on the Arrow player, the Arrow video player. I believe there's still DVDs and Blu-rays out there. They might be out of print by now, possibly. But you can sign up. It's on Amazon. You can sign up to the Arrow video player, or you can just sign up online like I've done. And you can get a free month and try it for yourself. So you don't even have to spend money to watch these films. So
a great little player, that. You've kind of forced my hand. I'm gonna have to get it.
Yeah.
Oh God, you told me about the Turkish Star Wars film that I'm gonna have to watch and I'm gonna have to review. I'm just very busy at the minute with a new career, but I'm gonna have to do it, aren't I? I hate you. I hate you so much. Also, I watched a little bit of it and I was like, on YouTube, I went, oh no, it's gonna be the worst film I've ever seen.
Possibly. Also on Amazon Prime, Star Crash is there, which is pure rip-off Star Wars. Star Wars exploitation.
I'll write it down.
It's got Christopher Plummer and David Hasselhoff in it. Christopher Plummer and David Hasselhoff in it, I believe.
What?
Yeah.
What is this film?
Star Crash. You write that down, boy. You write that down.
I'll just grab a pen. Hang on. Star Crash. Okay.
Star Crash. It's on Prime. I've just seen it today. You watch that.
Well, thanks, mate.
Anyway, back to the films. Yeah, it's a good player. Lots of cult films, a lot of Yakuza stuff, a lot of Japanese stuff's on there. So definitely check it out if you're into your cult movies and things. Lot of variety there as well. And it gets updated, I think, every couple of weeks or every week or so. So you've always got something on there. Good, bad, cult, you name it. But yes, anyway, let's begin. So let's start off by talking about Battles Without Humanity, Honor and Humanity. Where to begin?
What happens? I was going to say, I'll say it right out. I have no idea really what happens in these films. Honestly, truthfully, because like we said, it's all dialed up to 11 and everything, they're not, 90 minutes long each?
Yeah.
And everything happens so quickly, so fast, that even in the moments where it does drop to like 5, 6, you're not given enough time to really process who the characters are, what their intentions are or anything, because before you know it, it's literally bang, 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 bang again. And that's good. I love madness. I love action. I love craziness. But at the same time, I need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I need to know who I'm following.
Madness for the sake of madness doesn't help.
And like we said, because there's no redeeming features in any of the characters, you don't really get an opportunity to invest with them, to care about what happens to them, because they're all terrible people. So I completely lost track. I mean, I know what the plot is in the basic sense.
Well, to be fair, I had the same issue. Like I watched pretty much them back to back as well, which I don't think helped, because I started putting scenes from one film in another, and I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't fit. How did that? Oh wait, I'm mixing them up because they're both so mental and so like la 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 la, bang 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 bang.
I thought he was dead. Oh wait, he's dead in the other film. Oh okay then. Oh.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I totally agree with you, Andy. They're very hard to keep track of. Again, it's fast, it's frenetic, it's energetic, which again is a good thing. And I think the action sequences are really well done. It's got this kind of shaky cam style, so you get way up into the action. You feel like you could potentially be shot because everyone's running around. Everyone's like blood splurting everywhere. I like that. Those are some of my favorite bits. But again, like you said, we don't get to care about them or invest in the characters in the story because it's mostly just like, this guy died, this guy died, this guy died. Because it's still, both films are going for this historical documentary style. They have interviews with real people, historically.
I found it really weird, all that. I didn't expect it. Both films start pretty much like as the Second World War has ended. So for Battles Without Honor and Humanity, it's literally 1946. It's literally a year after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this guy is just sent to prison, isn't he, for shooting a samurai sword wielding maniac who injures his friend. And even in those opening 5 minutes, you're like, oh, just stop a minute, just let me process what's going on, because so much happens that you're introduced to two characters that you think, oh, these must be the main characters, and they both lose their arms in the first 30 seconds, and I was like, are these the main guys? What's going on? Who am I following here? And you're following the sword-wielding maniac, but at the same time, it doesn't give you any sort of evidential relevance.
Yeah. For all you know, they could be like the villains of the piece. They're getting their arms cut off. They might not necessarily be the heroes of the piece or protagonists of the piece. You don't know because there's no context for it. It's just a guy getting his arm cut off.
Yeah. It literally sticks with them for a good minute or so, if not longer. And you're like, okay, I'll settle in with these guys. One of them's got a scar down his face. He's a war veteran. Oh God, they've both lost their arms.
They're gone.
I'm pretty sure they're dead.
Yeah, you never see them again, those characters. Yeah. And again, it's kind of introducing these factual people and these factual names and historical dates and things. And they'll especially go with, like, when they introduce a character, they'll go, this is the future boss of this particular gang. And I'm like, right, okay.
It pauses the film, doesn't it?
Yeah, it pauses the film, it shows you the person, it gives you it's again, a little bit like Kill Bill, where it shows exactly who they are and what they do.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's and I went, okay. But again, like, there's that many characters, that many introductions, even in those first 5 minutes of battles to keep track of. And you do follow this one main character, but about halfway through the film, for a good 30 minutes, he goes to jail and you don't see him. You don't hear from him. You don't see him. You don't know what he's up to. You don't know how he's getting on in prison. Yeah. You just, a good third of the movie, you're just like, oh, so I'm now dumped with all these other characters I didn't really know or care about. My one anchor in this whole tornado is gone. You've thrown it away, and now I'm back to not knowing what the fuck is going on. And now I have to. It's almost like a film in 3 parts, really. It's like 3 different segments, and I was like, well, what? I was following that guy. Now, what's the point? I
think that's it's the identity of the film. Like, it's just because of this documentary kind of thing. It throws everything up in the air. When it suddenly changes to that documentary, and he went here and was never heard from again, or it pauses so harshly I mean, it does. There's
Yeah.
loads of moments where it literally just pauses very harshly and hits you with facts and figures and dates and whatever, and you're like, oh God, okay, I forgot what was going on now.
Yeah. And it is the pausing is effective. It's almost like it's not a smash cut, it's like a smash pause. Like everything, you hear the music cue. Like when someone gets introduced, it's pause. You see the name, you see what they do, you know, who they are and what they're going to be in charge of and what they already are in charge of. And then when they die, you get this music cue as well. Every time somebody dies, it's almost like The Godfather, like the whole orange thing. It's like every you see it orange, they die. With this, every time they die, you hear that music cue and you see the date and time of their death and their name and stuff. And again, it's effective, but again, it's like, but why should I care? Like, I imagine like these memoirs that they're based on. Battles is based on. Let me have a look.
Oh, it's
somebody. So it's based on the memoirs of a hitman called Kozu Mino. The character in the film is not called Kozu Mino, I think, for legal reasons. But it was novelized by Koichi Iyoboshi. Part of me just thinks it's like a list of people being murdered. Like, this guy died, this guy died, this guy died, this guy died. And then they just kind of slowly kind of tying it together. I remember I went to, when I was in Hungary, when I was in Budapest, in fact, I went to a place called the House of Terror, and I thought it was going to be a kind of like House of Horrors kind of, you know, like sort of thing, you know, a Madame Tussauds type thing. No, it was actually just a museum, which was a list of dead people that had died in the fascist regimes in Budapest. They had like this massive, tank in the foyer, but then the rest of the thing was just lists and lists of dead people, like documents written on the walls, you name it, just people that had died. And I was like, wow, this is depressing. And also, nothing was in English. So I was just walking around and just like lots of Hungarian text. And I was like, this is super depressing. Because they advertise the tank and they show the tank. And I was like, well, this is not quite what I expected. But it's just, it just seems like a list of dead people that's like slightly tied together by the narration and some of the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah, it's like almost like a shopping list of death, isn't it? It's like we go through all these characters, all these, you know, based on real life people and the early days of the Yakuza and how their deaths factored into like the modern formulation of it. It's very, when I say a struggle, I struggle because there were moments when I was actually really, really enjoying it. I just struggled to invest. It sounds a bit backwards, but I struggled to invest. I struggled to keep track, and it's because of that. Because there is literally so much going on. I don't know. I mean, these films, I'm just looking at them. It's part of a 5-part series, and they were all made in the space of 2 years. So they were all production lined off, which is not a bad thing, a bad thing at all, because obviously they were confident in what they were doing. They were confident in the style they were making these films. And clearly it is what Japanese audiences wanted. It's what they wanted out of these films. They wanted to know the historical facts. They wanted to know where it all came from. They wanted to see it played out like this. And obviously, you know, the connections and things that have happened in future films, like we said with Kill Bill and everything, and all the references, all the points of interest, you know, clearly they have a wide-reaching impact. It's just for me, I really did struggle. I struggled so much, and it does pain me a little bit, because I think these films probably are right up my alley. Yeah, there's just something about them, and I think it is maybe, you know, just the sheer unabated chaos mixed in with this really bizarre documentary kind of feel. It just didn't sit with me.
Yeah, it doesn't really gel. Do you think it's like almost a style over substance? Like there's not really any substance there, but the style is really strong and that works.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I probably lean more to that. I think because it is literally just balls to the wall chaos for a lot of it. And you don't really get a full sense of who the characters are. You get snippets, but they're mainly from, so like the bosses. The bosses are trying to consolidate their own individual powers, and then they get caught out because their naivety or they're too comfortable or things like that. You don't really get a sense of like the main character and what their real impact is until near towards the end, which is it's a bit strange, really.
That kind of last, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, you kind of get a bit more of it kind of slows down. I think you kind of get a little bit of it kind of dialing down a little bit, but not much with battles. I will try and I've tried to simplify the synopsis as best I can. I've left out a lot of fucking detail because it would just be like, this guy died, this guy died, this guy died.
Yeah, I'm literally like that.
I'm just going to read it out because I'm hoping it'll refresh both of our memories as well, and we'll kind of think about things. So the main character, Shozo Hirono, kills a drunken mad Yakuza for injuring his friends. While in jail, befriends a rival Yakuza from the Doi family and is welcomed into an associated family, the Yamamori clan. After getting into a fight with the son of a mediator between the two gangs, the Yamamori gang need to remove a politician, which will put them in direct conflict with the Doi family. The Doi discover this and team up with the Kato family from Hiroshima, start making moves against the Yamamori clan. A loose truce is formed as one of the members is now a guest of Yamamori. This does not last long, and Hirono kills Doi, the leader of the Doi clan. After some double crossing, he ends up in prison. During this time, the Korean War breaks out. The Yamamori gang grows in power and influence. Some members of the gang start dealing drugs, which is not seen as honorable by the old guard, including Yamamori himself. The power structure is being abused by Yamamori, who is dealing drugs that he has confiscated for personal profit, and his second-in-command, Sakai, learns of this and intimidates Yamamori into retirement and takes control of the gang. Hirono, out of prison, attempts himself to separate himself from the two gangs, but is asked to assassinate Sakai by Yamamori, but he says he won't do it. However, they get into a tussle and then they plan to kill each other, and he reveals Yamamori's plan. Yamamori has Sakai killed, and then right at the end, Hirono turns up at the funeral and is like, well, being a Yakuza member has been a bit shit, hasn't it? And then shoots the funeral kind of... shoots the coffin or whatever it is of Sakai, and that's basically... and looks at Yamamori as he leaves and just kind of fucks off. That is as best as I could condense the plot of this film into a chewable, digestible thing.
That's condensed. And this is a 90-minute film. That's condensed. And there's a lot going on in there. Hell of a lot going on in there. Almost like Casino levels of detail in that film. Like the amount of stuff that happens in it. And that's nearly double the length. Yeah, so much. There's so much like even in sort of like the basic terms, like the connections to like post-war male mentality and all this. Like you say, there's a clan that's obviously come away from Hiroshima, and they're trying to obviously rebuild, aren't they? Because everything they've had and everything they know is completely gone. It's little things like that as well. There's little details, there's little nuggets of information that are swallowed up by all of this. I like the ending because the ending's really quite impactful. Where he shoots up the entire this huge display in honor of his almost friend, weird, like almost becomes his brother kind of thing, and he shoots it up and destroys it, and basically becomes almost like a weird kind of Ronin, doesn't he?
A little bit.
He's not affiliated with anything anymore. He refuses to accept orders, and those little things are great. But there's just so much that happens, so much chaos, and so much other characters that you haven't mentioned.
Exactly.
Come and go, and it's just,
I mentioned like 4 characters in that breakdown. I mentioned about 4 characters that I think are integral to the plot. Other than that, there's a few others that are kind of tertiary, but again, you don't really get a sense of them. I said to you off the recording as well that it's almost like a slasher movie. Like it's a Friday the 13th where they're like, we have to get as many kills in as possible. So we have to introduce as many characters as possible and get them murdered off. So like you were saying, that as soon as they're here, you know, you get the little kind of explanation of who they are. But again, it's not who they are. It's just like their name, their job role.
Yeah.
And then they're dead.
Yeah.
That's it. And you're kind of like, oh, okay, right. They were integral to the plot. But I think you're right. I think the kind of this mad, like, kind of, you know, style of just insanity, which, you know, like I'm a fan of as well. But I think you need to build to that insanity. You need to earn that. You need to earn that insanity. You know, like Commando, for example. It's absolutely mental. The last, you know, 20, 30 minutes. It's insane.
Yeah.
But you've been along that journey. You've built up to the insanity, and then by the time you get there, it's welcomed. You're ready for it. You're like, yes, John Matrix. You know, just absolutely just murder a third world country. You know, that's what he does.
Like Kill Bill as well. Kill Bill earns the battle with the crazy 88. There's not 88 of them. Good reference there. Well done. And it earns the final fight with Oren Ishii as well, you know, because it gives you everything. It gives you the characters, it gives you their arcs, it gives you the reasons for why this is happening. There's so much in this film where, yeah, you do get the reasons, but you don't get a solid foundation for it. It's just kind of like it's said, it's done, it happens. Oh, okay, move on to the next one. And like you said about like it goes from literally 1946. So just after the Second World War, just after the Hiroshima bombing, right the way through up until and after the Korean War. That is a long fucking time. I mean, it's what, 10, 12, 14 years. That's a long time to have this vast spanning, you know, change in 90 minutes. That's a lot to get through really, really quickly. And considering, like I said, this is the first in a 5-part series, Jesus Christ. Just slow down a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you could have told that same story over the 5 films. You know, they don't do it. I think it's all separate and different characters.
Yeah, it's different characters. Yeah, obviously, I'm kind of just like generalizing, like, but yeah, they're all different characters. They're all different stories set in and around everything that's happening with the evolution, the change of the Yakuza and everything like that. But yeah, just slow it down a bit. Yeah. But again, like I said, it's clearly a product of the time. It's clearly what, you know, Japanese audiences wanted to see. They wanted to see the mayhem, the chaos, but with elements of truth, with the factual evidence, with, you know, these details of these people, these figures, these historical figures that they all know about. They all, like, they've tried to bury and cover up, but they had such a lasting impact, you know, on the underground politically. And within sort of like, you could call it cult media, really. Yeah. You know, they had those figures have had that impact. You know, similar like Henry Hill. Henry Hill's had like, you know, huge impact on sort of like the change in sort of the mob mentality and things like that, purely because of, you know, what he did, selling his story and all that. You know, that had a change in that regard. And these films, these people had those kind of changes, and people wanted to hear the story. So that's, you know, they created these films. I mean, they say fact is stranger than fiction, and I think if it is, you know, I can kind of believe it was that mental. Like, I can believe that was the style, and that was what happened. There's all this betrayal, there's all this ruthlessness, this brutality. You know, I get that, but again, like we've said, it's just we need something to ground us in all of this, so we can enjoy it more, so we can enjoy when it goes mental. There's a great quote here I got from the Time Out website, which I think you'll agree with. They say, this nihilistic anthology of murders changed the direction of the entire Yakuza movie genre. It just about bears reading as a sardonic critique of Japan's post-war development, but only because a history-minded narration is used to hold the whole thing together. Absolutely. That's summed up in like, that's like an academic kind of understanding of it, isn't it? And if I was a bit more academically inclined, that's pretty much how I would have said it, rather than waffling for the last 30 minutes. But yeah, that is it. It's hit on nail on the head. But obviously it neglects to say that it's, like I said, it's what people wanted. And you can tell because they were box office hits. People revel in them. Even now, people still revel in them. You know, Graveyard of Honor that we're going to talk about shortly has kind of disappeared, but Battles Without Honor and Humanity, it's still there. It's still a go-to film, really.
I think the film's impact in the film as a piece of history is important. I just don't think like speaking of William Friedkin and like French Connection, I watched that just this Christmas gone. I don't think it was all that personally, because again, I'd like to think I've seen this all before, but historically, that film is very important.
Yeah, because it changed certain aspects of cinema.
Absolutely,
how films are made, how they're shot. Like we were saying, there's a lot of moments where it's Steadicam use and it's right in there, right in the middle of the action. It comes away going back to sort of like Kurosawa, where it is very much on a stage, very, very proscenium arch filmed and everything. This is like in there, it's in the grittiness. Like, watch this guy get his arm chopped off. Oh, it's grim, isn't it? You love it. Look at all that blood spraying all over this guy's face. Oh, it's that kind of stuff. Like, it gets right in there into the horrible nature of sort of like these individuals, which you want. You want that griminess. You want to be in there as the, taking heroin and all this kind of stuff. That's the kind of film this tries to be, and you want it. You want to be in there with it. It's just too much. It's just too much, and not enough at the same time.
I was thinking about some of the kind of the rituals and the kind of things they do in the film, which I found quite interesting. Like, obviously, quite famously, they're in the Yakuza. If you've wronged somebody, or there's been an issue, or you've performed poorly, that often you can be asked by the leader of the gang to commit. I think it's Yubit Sume, which is basically having your finger cut off, like your little finger. And our character, the main character, Shizumono, I think it was, he has a bit of a bust up with a guy in it, and he turns out to be the mediator between the two. I mentioned it in the plot synopsis when I read that out, and it's just like a bust up at a kind of a gambling joint, illegal gambling joint. It's a bit of a fight, and they're like, "Oh well, we're in trouble now. This is we could go to war with the other gangs." Da, da, da. So he's like, "Don't worry, I'll do it. I'll cut my finger off." And he's asking the woman, he's like, "Is this the best way to do it?"
It's like, it's almost like an origin story of that ritual, isn't it? Clearly, it's happened before, but because everyone says to him, "Oh, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. What do you want to do that for?" And he goes, "No, it's a mark of
it's the honourable thing to do. Yeah,
an honourable thing to do. I'm going to apologise, and this is evidence that I'm apologising, and I mean it." And you get it. It does almost feel like the origin of that tradition. Like he turns to the woman and goes, "Is this how you do it?" And she's like, "Yeah, I guess so." And all the other guys are sort of sat there around watching him do it, almost like they're, acknowledging, "Oh, this is the way forward. This is how we can learn. This is how we can solve issues without blowing each other away." Even though at the end of the film, it's all blow each other away.
Yeah, it was quite. I found it quite a humorous scene, like a darkly humorous scene, because they do it, and he's like, he's like blood squirting everywhere. He's like, he even takes his trousers off not to ruin his trousers. And then they lose the finger, and it ends up in like the chicken hut, and it gets pecked away, and they're like, "Oh, look at this piece of shit! It's rubbish now. Nobody wants this." He's like, "Oh, my finger." And then they get to the guy, and they're like, "Yeah, we're so sorry this happened. Really, really sorry." And the guy was like, opens up the little package, and he's got the little finger, and he's like, "Well, you didn't need to do this."
Exactly. Yeah,
just two lads having a fight. What are you doing? You crazy?
Like I said, it's a marker of sort of like, the origin of that. Because obviously he's like, "Why have you done this?" And then he explains, he's like, "Oh, okay then, all right." So it's kind of like, from then on, somebody does fuck up in small terms. It's like, you know what to do. All right, chop my finger off. Little finger first. I mean, because you see that in that The Outsider with Jared Leto. They do that. I mean, they make it so much more. It's like deadly serious and everything. But that film's far too serious for its own good anyway.
But I liked that little injection of humor, and I like that Yamamori is like a proper like cowardly sleazeball in it, and he's just like he's all like he's the villain of the piece, the real villain, because he's this cowardly guy. He says, he gives all his money to Shizo, the main character. He's like, you can have all my money, you can have all my land when you come out of prison and all this. But then he tries to get Shizo killed as well, because again, he's trying to cover it up. There's so many like betrayals and people changing side and working for a different gang. It's really hard to keep track of, let alone who's died, but actually who belongs where, who's working for who, and what their intention is as well.
I think I said to you when we were talking about it the other day, that is the thing I think that threw me off, because there is so much swapping and shifting of allegiances, because it's nothing to do with the language barrier. I'm quite happy watching and reading subtitles and everything, but I just couldn't keep track of, if I turned away to pick up my glass to have a drink, I'd look back and something had changed. And it was that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, God almighty, I literally just, you're not allowed, you've not got time to even look away for 5-10 seconds, because in those 5-10 seconds you can guarantee somebody has switched sides or done something or killed someone, or another character has been introduced that has a similar methodology to a different character, so you end up getting confused as to which character is which. And it's things like that. That's why I struggled.
It definitely took me out of the film. For moments like that, like we said, like 11 to like 5 to like 11 to like 5 to like throwing away a whole character, basically. You're only your one saving grace. And I'm just like, okay. And even when he came back, I wasn't even that bothered when he came back. I was like, oh, he's here again, but I kind of forgotten about him now because I'm now following the other characters.
We're now more interested in this guy, Sake, who's doing all this other stuff. All right, okay.
Yeah, because Saka wants the wealth to be spread out a bit more. That's what he's asking for. But obviously they're like the old guard, like Yamamori's like, oh, you youngsters, you don't respect me. But then Yamamori is like literally dealing under the table, because he's like, we can't sell drugs, we won't sell drugs, that's not what we do. But then when he confiscates the drugs, he's like, well, I'll just sell them and I'll keep the profit. And that's what initiates the kind of Sakai taking over, is this kind of betrayal, because they were like, because the proper split in the middle about this whole thing until that happens, and they're like, right, and they just bully him. They don't kill him, they just bully him out of his position. And then Sakai invests a lot of that money into like a regular kind of like a startup company, effectively. And so he wants like the kind of traditional kind of front for the illegal kind of operations and stuff. And that's when Chizo comes back and the whole kind of, that starts up again. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I did enjoy it. Like your everything we've said is bang on. Everything you've said is bang on. And I think it is tricky to find your way in this film. But I think the style is great. The music is really good. Just like the direction is good. But it's just, again, I think it's down to the writing and the fact that it's based on a real thing. It kind of, I think sometimes when these kind of crime dramas, you want them to be kind of over the top and kind of like almost a little bit of a heightened reality. And this does have that, but I think, like what you said, where it's a little limited. I think sometimes being based on a true story is a limiting thing, because you can't go outside. I think like maybe if they spaced out the murders a bit more, they'd have more impact, or we spent more time with the characters, or we only showed some of those murders. Like they're all very well choreographed, all the murders and stuff. And I think it's in Graveyard of Honor, but there's this great one where he's shooting somebody in a barber's chair and it keeps spinning round. I love that. That was brilliant. And
you've got that referenced in future gangster movies. That exact same kind of thing.
Or like a montage. Like they could have just done a montage of loads of them just getting like
The Godfather at the end.
Like,
do you renounce him? I do renounce him.
Like I'd have preferred that than just doing like, and here's like, they're all good and they're all shot really well, but it's like, okay, someone else is getting shot and someone else is getting shot and someone else is getting shot. Are they getting shot in the street? They're getting shot in the street. They're getting shot in an alley. They're getting shot in an alley. I'm like, okay.
So that character got shot? Oh no, it was this character got shot.
Exactly.
That character has now got shot. There's another character here that's got shot who looks like that character, who behaves like that character. Oh, they're all dead. Okay.
Like there's that. I think it's called like Kambara or something. He's the one that is like the big mouth, and because they hide the politician away.
Yeah.
And because they don't want to kill him because they're worried that it's going to set off the gang war. So they're like, we won't kill him, but we need to make sure he's out of the election effectively and no one can vote for him. So they basically put him and they say, you're sworn to secrecy, but then the big mouth gangster who's like reveals it to the Doi gang. And they're like, right, we're going to kill you. And then one of theirs swaps sides to kind of keep the peace because I think Kambara is his brother. And then Kambara joins that gang that was going to kill him. And now start looking for them.
Again, there's another plot point. There's another plot point that happens literally probably in the space of 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then whole shift in all these characters' mentalities, the methodology, and, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's mental. And then Shizo kills the Doi leader, and then he's hiding out. And then Kambara, who's now working for Yamamori, comes back and says, I'll protect you. But then actually Yamamori's trying to kill him. So then and Shizo has to go into prison to protect himself. And then I think it's the guy, I want to say like Takaguchi, I want to say. The guy who moved over to from the Doi family to the Yamamori family as a way to keep the peace is like, well, you're a liar. And it just basically, and he's like, shoots Kambara dead. And one of my favorite scenes is the police know about him murdering Kambara, go to his house, and he hides in the bed of his children.
Yeah.
And then they pull the covers back, and they're like, and he just starts shooting the cops right next, like lying next to his 2 children. He's like, fucking kill him.
It's so bizarre.
Weird.
Really, really funny though, but bizarre.
Yeah. Before we go on to Graveyard, I just want to mention something that Fukasaku's biographer said, because it'll come up a little bit. So Fukasaku biographer Sadao Yamane believes that Battles was popular because of the time of its release. Japan's economic growth was at its peak at the end of the 1960s. The student uprising took place at that time. The young people had similar feelings to those of the post-war society depicted in the films.
Yep.
Yamane also stated that for the rest of his career, Fukasaku was approached many times by producers to create movies similar to Battles, but always turned them down, wanting to move on to films he found more interesting.
Again, it's exactly what I said before. Literally, it's what people wanted at the time. So the student uprising, the change in just the way people think. Like you said, Japan was on the rise economically. That's all down to the new wave of young people coming through, a new generation. And this is what they wanted. They wanted this kind of movie. They wanted this kind of entertainment, fast, frenetic, riddled with facts and more of it. Yeah, I think it's quite condemning.
Yeah.
Condemning, is that right? Yeah. That he basically, wanted to move on and do more interesting stuff. Because
it made an impact, it made a change for the better for cinema. Like, sometimes cinema needs to be, we've got to move on, we've got to change with the times, and
it'll happen in the next 10 years.
Oh, absolutely.
In Hollywood and everything like that, something will change again. Something drastic will change. It always does.
Like the Westerns went the way of the Westerns did. Superhero movies probably will eventually go that way at some point. There'll be a new craze for, like, we'll get more horror or something like that. That'll be the new craze, or bloody period dramas. I don't know, or biopics. There's always like you can see it in, like, most of these Clone Wars are part of that. Like the more I do them, the more of a kind of, because again they're coming out around about the same time, a lot of them. So they're usually part of a wave of those type of movies being made, and that's why they're so similar. I
mean, you could argue that this kind of change, this kind of change in people's perceptions of cinema, and it's already happened. Because what happened recently, bloody Amazon bought MGM, one of the oldest bloody production companies. I remember doing like a thesis on them, when they were battling RKO Pictures and all that back in the 30s, 40s, and it's massive. That is a massive shift. The battle of the cinema is over. It's online media now. It's online.
Yeah.
It's all online. It will be. Of course, they'll still release films in the cinema, but those are no longer the battlegrounds. The in-house picture is no longer a battleground. It's cinema is like an extension, really. It's just like the added bonus just to get a bit of extra pocket money, because the revenue is now it's all. I mean, so Sony are putting all their films on Netflix, aren't they? So Sony with Netflix, MGM's with Amazon, Disney Plus has got all the Marvel films, all the Star Wars films, everything that will come from, their production company, 20th Century Fox. It's all going to be on Disney Plus as well as in the cinema. That is the shift, I think, in our modern age. And that, but within the next 10 years, we'll see, I don't think we'll see the death of cinema, but I think we'll see a much more scaled back approach where it focuses maybe on people going watching cult films. Like you and Dennis went watching
Demons. Yeah, we went to see Demons.
Yeah. I really wanted to come with you on that, but I couldn't find the time.
Yeah, don't worry.
This new career I've embarked on.
Well, they're still open. They're still doing these kind of films.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the way forward. I think that's probably how cinema will become. It'll go back to like a smaller kind of thing, maybe, where we're showing these cult movies and people are, going and watching them, even though they are on like Amazon and things like that. They'll get drowned out because of these bigger features getting put on there.
But the thing is, people don't want to go to a cinema, pay that much money, and then be disappointed. Why not go to the cinema and watch something you love already?
Like, currently, like I've not been able to watch a lot recently, hence why my sort of like reviews have kind of fallen away a little bit. But me and the missus we're still stoically debating whether we go and watch Cruella. And Cruella's been out for a couple of weeks now, and we want to go to the cinema. We really want to go to the cinema. We're quite happy to go and pay 20 quid plus drinks and whatever, but then it's 20 quid on Disney Plus as well. And we're like, I don't want to pay it. But at the same time, okay, but we're going to pay more at the cinema. What do we do? It's that trade-off, isn't it? It's like, you want to see the big screen adventure. I will never, like, if there's a Marvel film like Black Widow, for example, I will not watch that on TV. I will go to the cinema to watch that.
Yeah.
But these other films that you're unsure about, would you rather be sat at home, comfy and whatever? That's the shift, I think. That's the shifting dynamic, is these unknown films, these smaller films that you might not, I don't want to really drive 20 minutes to a cinema, pay 40 quid only for it to be shite.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that's why we've had that shift to TV as well, because the big blockbuster, Gone with the Wind type dramas aren't really a thing anymore, and they're not a draw. Like movie stars are not a draw.
Yeah, I would honestly love a big old-fashioned 4-hour Western sword and sandals epic that has an interval. Yeah. I don't think we'll ever get it again, and that's a little bit upsetting.
Yeah.
But just in, obviously this changing dynamic of the, in the 1960s in Japan is not the same thing, but it was the start of the shift.
So it was a revolution in the way that crime was depicted on cinema, in Japanese cinema. Yeah. Like a lot of Japanese cinema, like we spoke about Kurosawa, he's very influenced by, Western media. And I think Fukasaku is the same as well. I think there's a lot of Western influence. And then it kind of loops back to the West. This then influences the West. And we see that a lot. But yeah, I think these you won't get your period dramas in cinemas anymore. You won't get things like that. You won't get the award-winning kind of Oscar, unless there is Oscar buzz about a specific film. I don't think you will then see it at the cinema, unless it's maybe getting that kind of that film festival, Cannes sort of thing. Yeah, I think those kind of films, like your big blockbusters, your Fast and the Furiouses, your Jurassic Parks, your Marvel, your Star Wars, you still get them in the cinema. But I think the smaller, more independent, that's why a lot of like really serious actors kind of shift to TV, because again, it's more like the dramas are working there. You've got a bit more to play with. There's less money, so there's less risk, that sort of thing. Anyway.
You got to give credit, just take quick. You got to give credit to those agents early on, sort of like 8-9 years ago, that convinced a couple of A-listers to dive into TV. Because they obviously saw what was coming and were like, do this, cement yourself, because it's all going to go online. It's all going to go on TV. Telling you now. Well fucking done.
Yes.
Because now every A-list actor is like, oh, can I be in a drama on HBO, please? Or what's ABC got going? What's Netflix doing? I want to be involved in that.
Again, it's a complete shift because TV actors always wanted to be movie actors. Now movie actors want to be TV actors.
A-list actors didn't want anything fucking to do with it unless it was like a cameo or something in a random episode of bloody Friends. They didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Now they all fucking want it.
Right. We've talked enough about cinema itself, so let's get back to these films. Right, Graveyard of Honor. So this is another one, which it's just another one.
It's another one.
So it's fairly similar. Again, it's about the real story of a criminal. This time it is, what's his name? Rikio
Ishikawa. Oh,
that's it, Rikio Ishikawa. So again, this is based off some real life kind of newspaper and kind of memoirs and stuff. This guy is the most self-destructive guy I think I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah.
It opens with kind of interviews from real people talking about the real man himself and what he was like. And it basically has a line where it says, like, as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a Yakuza, but like somebody else says it. So I was like, oh, it's like Goodfellas.
Exactly.
And he
Goodfellas stole that line.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, could be. And he's talking about him. He's always seen himself as a balloon, that he's always going to rise and rise and rise. But yeah, there's a little bit of like Scarface and Goodfellas in this kind of DNA of this, or vice versa.
Yeah.
You can definitely see that kind of that because like the way it's described on all the websites and stuff and everywhere I could see, like IMDb, it was like, oh yeah, his rise in power and he becomes this Yakuza godfather, and I was like, no, he doesn't. He doesn't even get fucking close.
Not at all. Not at all. He's a mess. Yeah. He's a mess, and he fucking ruins everything for everyone and hurts everyone. there's no, again, like we were saying, there's no redeeming features here. This film, I think, it's more darker, it's more depressing, and it's more sort of like, oh God, and why that kind of thing? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you? Oh, I mean, just
you never really
head into the middle of it. There's a bit where he's hiding, isn't he? And he runs into this house, this geisha house, and he goes into this room and he's like, oh, I'm going to hide here. Just let me hide here. And she's like, okay, just don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. And he goes, no, don't worry, I won't. And then he brutally rapes her for no reason. And at that point I went, oh, this is going to be a struggle. This is going to be, again, like, I don't know, because it started off a little bit differently. I was like, okay, I get it. I can see this guy. He's clearly Tony Montana kind of thing. He doesn't give a shit. He's pissing in the street. He's robbing food. He's wearing sunglasses. Nobody else is. He's barging into people. I was like, okay, he's the anti-hero. No, he's not. He's just a really, really horrible human being. And, there is the development in the film where he starts to understand the errors of his ways and he starts to feel responsible, especially for the geisha. And, you get a lovely bit towards the end where I think he's a bit repentant and whatever. But again, it's like everything he does in between doesn't add up to that. It doesn't solidify any of it. So you're left with like, oh, I don't believe you.
Yeah. There's so many opportunities he's given as well. Like he's like, I'm not going to kill you, but you're banished. Even though you tried to kill me and were almost successful.
Yeah.
He comes back. He's like, you're banished for 10 years. Year and a half, he's already back. And he's like, they're like, what are you doing, mate? What are you doing?
There's the bit, isn't there, where he's been banished and they see him sat in a restaurant or something, and they're all looking at him and they're all like talking to each other, going, "Is that him? Is that him? Really?" You can just see like them mulling over what to do. They don't know what to do because he's just sat there. He's just sat there in the middle of this thing, just doing a menial task. Yeah. And they're like, we fucking told you this is off for 10 years and you're here. Have you forgot?
Yeah, very much. So like I'll go again. I've condensed the plot as best I can. Rikio falls foul of a politician. So we've been introduced to him. He's an arsehole. He commits a few crimes, but this is the main this is the main part of the plot. Like he's pissing on prostitutes, he's doing all this sort of stuff. He's getting in trouble in the gambling dens for no real reason.
Oh, that scene, it made me laugh. Sorry. He's just walking down the street and he sort of looks to his right and goes, oh, okay. turns around, there's just a group of prostitutes sat in the corner, and he just pisses all over him. Oh, it's so funny.
I will say this about these two films: not the feminist ideal. These two films, really.
No, they're not. There's a lot of questionable things, isn't there?
Yeah, like I know when we talked about Kurosawa, we talked about how great and powerful the women were in those films.
They have no power here whatsoever.
It's nothing. They're basically just things to do and or get money from, basically, which is not nice.
There's not even any like sort of evidential learning or evolution of these characters either, is there? There's nothing to them. They are literally just things in the film.
Yeah.
In both the films, this one more so.
There's a bit more of a lecherous vibe to this one, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll go through the plot as quickly as I can. So Rikyo falls foul of a politician that his gang are in cahoots with at a gambling den, and he destroys his car, which I enjoyed, leading to he just sticks a rag in, doesn't he, and lights it on fire, and they're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He's like, ha, 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 runs away, and the whole fucking car explodes.
That's the boss's car. I know.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what he says. So obviously his boss is insanely mad about this, gives him a hell of a beating, and you think, okay, he's learned his lesson now. He's definitely learned his lesson. No, he comes right back. He goes to see the woman he rapes basically becomes his wife throughout the film, which is questionable in itself. And he forces her to become a prostitute to earn money. And like, she's the only one with like a good heart in the whole film, really. She's the only one that's even slightly nice, but she's constantly taken advantage of and then dies of, I believe it's tuberculosis, I believe. Yeah. And then he has tuberculosis as well. Like, it clarifies that he has tuberculosis, but he seems to survive for like ever. And it doesn't really affect him. He just has a bit of a cough now and again.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, isn't it? It's kind of, okay, it's supposed to be a debilitating illness, but...
Yeah, exactly. And you should, like, how long, you're supposed to like almost be dying pretty much. Like, that's why there's vaccines for the fucker, because it's so bad. Anyway, so he comes right back after this beating with his boss. He goes to see the geisha, comes back, and then tries to kill his own boss. And the boss is like, "What are you doing, man? What are you doing?" And then even then, he's almost successful. He almost does it. But he's like, and even then he goes, "I'm not going to kill you, but you are banished for 10 years. So he goes to prison for 10 years, then he's banished for 10 years.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. So he comes out of prison. And when he comes out of prison, that's when the banishment starts, I think. But then after a year and a half, he just comes back. And in this time, he's developed a heroin addiction and got tuberculosis as well.
Yeah. It's going well.
So stubborn motherfucker, this guy. He's so stubborn. So he returns to his original boss. Now, he's become a drug addict. He's got this junkie who's kind of his partner now. And you can kind of see that he's like, the higher he's trying to get in the ranks of the Yakuza, like his posture just becomes worse and worse and goes lower and lower. And I really like that visual kind of dynamic. And he keeps seeing the balloons, like he's like, "Oh, I'm like that balloon. I'm going to get there." But like, it's almost like the harder he tries to become a Yakuza, the further he gets away from it, like becoming that boss. After this exile that he's had, he ends up killing the guy who protects him, who sees him at the gambling den. He goes, "What are you doing here? You're an idiot. It's only been a year and a half. Here's some money. Piss off somewhere." And again, the closest thing he has to a friend, and he was like, "I'm not pissing off anywhere. I'll be back." And then tries to kill him, cuts his face, and then goes to his house and successfully kills him. And you're like, "What are you doing? You're the only mate he had. He gave you everything. You're just killing him." He gets arrested for that because he holds off the police, gets arrested for that, and his junkie mate goes insane because there's no drugs left. Comes out of prison and goes, and his wife has been supporting him with being a prostitute. She's there every court date. Like, she basically loves him, despite him being the most horrific person. And then she dies of tuberculosis. There's a really tragic bit where he's picking out her ashes from the cremation, like the bones and stuff. He then visits Kawada, who was the leader of the gang, and he says, "Right, I'm going to start my own gang, but I need some money, I need some land, and I need some guns." And he's like, "Are you having a fucking laugh? What are you on about?" And while he's doing that, he starts eating his own wife's remains. starts just chewing them and like they're polos or something, mints or something, just keep chewing away. And the guy just walks out because initially he says, "Yeah, I'll give you some land. Why not?" But the further it goes on, he's like, "Well, I'll be back." Then he robs from their drug dealers from the same gang, but then they find him at a graveyard, almost kill him, but he still survives somehow because they end up breaking all their swords because they're pretty fucking useless as well. Ends up in prison, still hasn't died from all these wounds or anything.
6 years, I think. He's in the prison the last time for 6 years.
And then he throws himself off the top of the prison and dies. And he's written on the walls, he's gone, "What a laugh, 30 years of madness." And his grave, which is even almost much like a dark kind of joke. It says, what does it say? It says honor and humanity, I think it says on.
Yeah.
And it's like it's almost like a dark joke, like black comedy. He's like, haha, that's what my life was all about. Yeah, as fucking no way.
And it's real. That gravestone's real as well. That's literally one of the last remaining bits of information they have on this actual guy. Is that gravestone. It's really, really bizarre. Really bizarre.
I did quite laugh. I laughed because he went to fuck you prison.
Yeah.
Or like Fuku prison, but I read it as like fuck you because like you're an arsehole, so you're going to fuck you prison. But yeah, Takashi Miike is obviously quite a fan of this as well because he remade the film in 2002. Takashi Miike is known for doing some mental films like Audition and Ichi the Killer, which is another Yakuza film. So like he's obviously gone this, but more.
More craziness.
I would like to watch the remake and just see how it differs and how similar it is. But yeah, it's a mad one. This one, just like the last one, really. It's just as mad. I don't think it's not quite as action packed. There's a lot more story. There's a lot more character. There's a bit more of a through line. The music is a lot more kind of tragic as well. It's not as like da-da. It's a lot more kind of subtle in the telling of the story. What are your other thoughts on it?
Again, I think I did prefer this one over Battles, but again, same thing. I was just like, because I couldn't invest in the character because of all because there's no redeeming features or anything. I just struggled, really, really struggled to get the point. Honestly, beyond sort of like, oh, watch this horrible man do all these terrible things because he's awful from the start. There's no sort of like collapse into these, into this horrible.
Yeah, he doesn't start as like an innocent and then gets kind of taken in and becomes awful. Or there's no rise and fall. Like you could like it's not a rise and fall story because there's not really a rise.
No, it's just constant falling. It's just like it's his inability to understand his place. And his limitations because he just wants it all there and then. Yeah, like the difference between sort of like him and sort of like Tony Montana is that Tony Montana consolidates his power, does things to initiate his business, and then runs afoul because he's consumed by his own greed and by his own power. Here, there's no consolidation of anything. It's just like, give me money so I can achieve this. Give me this so I can achieve this. No, okay, well you die. I'll kill you as well. I'll kill all these guys over here. Oh, well, you're going to have to disappear for 10 years now. Oh, okay then. But I'm still coming back and I'm going to get what I deserve. Well, he doesn't deserve anything. He's not earned anything. There's no earning. It's all just demanding. Yeah. And it makes him such an unlikable character. And then he does things on top of it that make it even fucking worse.
Yeah, like even outside of just the gang stuff, he's just awful anyway. He doesn't plan anything. He doesn't learn anything. A complete fucking moron. And he just keeps doing that. Like, repeating the same action is like madness. It's not with the science experiment. If you repeat the same process, it's just madness. And that's what he does. He just goes, I want that money. I deserve that money. Give me that money. If you don't give me that money, I'll kill you. That's it for the entire film. And people are just like, you're mental. You could
argue that it's influenced by his illness, his debilitating illness, but it doesn't play into it. No. It doesn't play into it. You get the odd nod and reference here, but it's actually his wife who suffers more because of it. So basically, you're supposed to acknowledge the illness via his wife, as opposed to himself.
Yeah.
But then it does the whole, well, now he's addicted to heroin. Okay, maybe that factors into it. Maybe it's desperation so that he can get more drugs and all this. But again, it doesn't really factor into it too much.
And it's not
kind of almost like an extension without any meaning.
Yeah. Well, he's not, and it's not like he's like, he doesn't know what he's doing. Like he has his mental faculties. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like he's not mental. He's not mental in the way that it's like, I'm just going to kill anyone. Like he says, right, you need to die, you need to die, you need to die. So, he has his faculties about him, but he still doesn't learn, doesn't plan. He just like, what again, a lot of these films are just walking up to somebody in the street and just shooting them. There's no like get a sniper rifle or plant a bomb in a car or anything like that. Like no subtle ways of assassinate. It's just like, wear a disguise or do it in the middle of the night, sneak in like a ninja or something. It's just like, right, you're in the street, I'm in the street, I've got a gun, bang, I shot first, you die. Bam.
Yeah, and when you talk about like mental faculties degrading and stuff, when take Joker as an example, that film, it starts off where he's kind of a broken person to begin with, and then it gets worse. His psyche gets broken to a point where he becomes a character because he's no longer the real person. And you see the shift, like we were saying in this film, he slowly degrades into like this hunched up sort of like, again, you could say that's a marker of the tuberculosis maybe because, you do actually you can't use your body or whatever, but it's never really said. So like the opposite in Joker is he's very hunched over to begin with. As his psyche is being destroyed, as he's losing his mental faculties, he becomes upright. He becomes very confident in his movement because this character is taking over. But there's nothing in here of that because he's all very one level. So when he is starting to degrade, it's just literally for no purpose. Which is a shame. I think if they'd have linked it together and said, his desperation is making him hunched over and, give me this fucking money, I deserve it. Becoming like a Gollum kind of figure, like give me the fucking, I want this because it's mine. I deserve this. This is mine. Look what it's making me do. Look what it's turning me into. There's none of that. There's none of that. And I think that's a bit of a shame. Because
like there's a lot of narration in it that kind of says, we only knew this, or we knew people who knew him. But there's nothing to say like who he is other than the things he does. Yeah, it's
and like, I think that's a bit of a mistake. Sorry to interrupt. I think that's a bit of a mistake that these films went down that hardened documentary thing. I think in this film there could have been it could have benefited a little bit more from creative, ideas rather than going, oh, we didn't know anything about this guy, so we're not going to make it up. Well, there's a difference between making it up and, being influenced and expanding upon the knowledge of what you think of the character. You're not necessarily lying. You're going, we don't know any information, but based on his character that we do know, we can, hint that maybe it was going this way for him. Maybe he did this thing. Maybe he was doing that. Maybe he was broken inside in his head, but they do, because they try and make it so fundamentally factual. There's no room for that. There's no room for maybe he did have, a personality disorder or something like that. But again, because of this film, they wanted the action. They wanted it fast, furious, 90 minutes, bingo, done. Make another one.
Yeah, I think again, like we said about battles, it's that realism is restrictive in some ways. That factual basis of something is a restrictive thing on the creative process. Like you said, there's no creative license given. Even though you could have done that, you could have there's loads of to be based off a true story, to have that on a film poster only needs to be 20% true. So really, you could have thrown a lot of this factual stuff away, really, and still said this is still based on fact, but we're just adding a few little things to make it an entertaining film. It's got to be entertaining at the end of the day, and that's, I think, what holds these films back a little bit. Again, I think it's shot well, looks good. But I think it's the writing. It's purely the writing that is restricting it, and the way it's kind of. I don't know if it's maybe you've got to include this, you've got to include that, we're going to have this in it, we're going to show this. I don't know if that's also affected it. But
like you said, there are really, really good shots in this. So the use of the Steadicam is even more prevalent in this film, where it's literally right in there, almost in between the legs, or in between sort of in the midriff area, in amongst all these characters while they're fighting and shooting and killing each other. And then on the flip side of it, there's a wonderful shot where I think he's in one of the geisha houses or something like that, and he's completely smacked off his head on heroin, and he's sat next to a whore who, again, she looks dead. I'm not sure whether she is dead or not, but she's just lying there. Again, they've just taken heroin together, and it stays there for a good 10, 12 seconds, that singular shot, and then it cuts into his face like a little bit closer, and you're like, okay, I can see elements of what needed to be more in this film. You needed to do more of this smaller bit, this kind of stuff. Let me into the character. Yeah. Let me in. And that's what I wanted more than anything in these films. I wanted to be in a little bit more rather than the mayhem.
Yeah.
So although the mayhem's good, it means nothing if I don't give a shit about the character. That's my big problem with movies. Like in general, I think it's like you can have all the chaos you want. I love chaos. I love insanity. But if I don't give a shit about the characters, I don't care. Because Aliens has some throwaway characters, but you get given stuff that makes you care about them. So when they die, you go, fucking hell. Hicks, Newt, hey, Vasquez, anybody ever told you look like a man? Has anybody ever told you? Oh! That kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah. I think, like, looking at some of his later films, like, people will probably will recognize his later work with, like, Battle Royale.
Yeah,
Kinji Fukasaku's Battle Royale has those, like you just said about Aliens, it has those characters, and you get to know those characters, even though they're being killed off left, right, and center. Again, there's more here for you to grab onto. There's more in Battle Royale for you to grab onto and to relate to. So when they do die, you're like, oh fuck, or like when it comes out of nowhere, you're like, oh shit, oh no, it's that character's gone, and this is the tension is there, and the worry is there, and you identify with these characters. But with, like, with Rikio in this, you don't identify with him because you're just awful all the way through it. There's nothing. There's not even like a little thing, because even where it says, "Oh, she became my wife," Rikio married her before her death, but we don't know if that was his doing or it's something she wanted. So he could have forced her into marriage just to get, like, the life insurance money or something. But yeah, like Battle Royale and Battle Royale 2 is quite important to Fukasaku because at the time he had terminal prostate cancer, and the doctors told him, they said, you can't go anywhere, you need to be hospitalized. And he said, no, I need to finish my film, I need to finish Battle Royale 2. And that was the last film he made. Again, I've not seen that, but it's on Arrow.
I've not seen the second one, but I absolutely love the original. I've got like a collector's edition of it, and I love it, absolutely love it. But like you said, it's so different style, characterization. There's a lot of characters in Battle Royale, and you're given just about enough to be invested in some of them, so that when they do get killed off, you go, oh fuck me, Jesus Christ, that kind of thing.
Yeah, even the opening scene in the classroom, you get the setup. You go, right, this is the setup, this is the story, this is what's going to happen. Bang, off we go. Like that. That for that moment is good enough, because you go, okay, you've set the premise. I'm grounded. I'm here. Yeah. Now the chaos has begun. Yeah. Now I'm ready for the chaos.
Yeah, we get given everything. We get given the stakes. We get given the characters. We get given the ramifications. We get given the end as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're all going to die. Good luck to whoever wins.
But with like battles and with a little bit more with Graveyard, you get a bit more of a grounding.
Yeah.
But even then, it's still almost straight into the kind of thing. But with battles, it's almost none of that. It just goes post-war Japan. Things are a bit shit. Anyway, bang, bang, bang. I did quite like the scene in Graveyard with the third nationals, which are like Korean and Taiwanese prisoners of war that had been released, and then they were like, we're protected by the American GI, so fuck you, and they're just like taking the piss and illegally gambling. And there's a great moment where they go in to rob the third nationals, Rikio and the gang, and then that's when he goes to store the money, and straight after that, but they get locked up, and the guard is like, oh, what are we going to do with you guys? Well, actually, we've been after the third nationals, and now we've got them for illegal gambling up to 3 years. So cough, cough, nudge, nudge, here's the key. He just let them go. I loved it. It was just like, oh, well, cheers for that. But yeah, just, I'll just leave this key here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to turn away for a moment if just in case. I love that. Again, like one of the great little tiny bits of humor in these films that is like well earned, well deserved. And I was laughing out loud. It was like a bit like the guy going, "Oh, you didn't need to cut your finger off. What are you doing, you weirdo?"
Yeah.
It's just great. But I think we have come to the point now where we need to pick one of these films to be the better of the two.
Yeah, I think we're ready as well.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So as usual, there are 5 categories for comparison. So we've got writing, acting, music, cinematography, and direction. So let's start with the writing. Again, we said that the writing is probably the weakest thing in these films, arguably. Which way do you think you're leaning?
Probably the latter.
Graveyard, yeah?
Yeah, Graveyard, beg your pardon, yeah. I got confused between latter and former then. How silly of me.
Well, to be fair, it's quite easy to get these two films mixed up, as we've discussed.
Yeah, Graveyard for me, purely because it is that little bit more streamlined, is that little bit more, I say little, and I mean little, that little bit more focused on certain aspects of the character. But again, only in the smallest measure. And I'm thinking about sort of like the bits where he's talking with junkie mate, and junkie mate's like, "Oh, we're gonna get fucking killed. We need more shit." And he's like, "Fuck you, fuck your shit." Those kind of moments. Again, that doesn't sound like much because I've just just made it so basic, but it's much better structured, I think.
Like I totally agree. I think I'd definitely give it to Graveyard as well. Again, it's just, I think it's more action-packed battles, so there's a bit more kind of dynamism to it. And I think maybe it's, I don't know if it's maybe better choreographed with the fights and stuff, but yeah, for me, I think Graveyard is it's more of a character piece as opposed to, like we said, the main character in battles fucks off for half an hour, and then we're left in kind of no man's land trying to figure out who do I follow now, which character do I follow now, and it's really not anybody until he comes back. So yeah, I think as a through line, as a kind of like an up and down kind of roller coaster ride of a film, I think Graveyard does that better. I preferred the way the documentary style works better in this, I think, than
it's not quite as intrusive, even though it does kind of like there's moments where you go, "Oh, okay, I get it."
It's like you said about exposition on your channel and on this channel, like battles is just like, oh, and this, by the way, here's some narration. Yeah. So you have context for all these murders.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, again, that's another big grindy annoyance of me. Is like, if you're having to tell me, that's because you haven't told me in your film. If you're having to tell me in like, oh, well, remember when we did that? And remember when this guy died because of this happening? It's because you haven't shown me properly. You haven't conveyed it properly in your script. If you're having to tell me in black and white, you haven't done your job.
Show, don't tell. That's the cardinal rule.
Yeah, show, don't tell. I mean, obviously, some bits, you have to go, oh, fucking hell, he's had his arm blown off. Oh, he's dead now. Yeah, okay. But we saw it, things like that. Like the guys that get their arms cut off in the beginning of battles, they're dead. I don't need to be told they're dead because literally they've had their arms cut off and then they're left.
Yeah, and the blood is like nothing. They're not covering them up. They're just streaming blood.
That left them. Yeah,
that amazing style. So so we'll give writing to Graveyard. So next one is acting. So which had the better acting of the two films?
Graveyard, because like we said, it does focus more in on that singular character, and we do see elements of him changing and like becoming more aware of what he's doing, the inability to change, the reluctance to change, refusal to change. We do see that, and then we see like all these other people around him going, "What the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? We're your friends, we're your allies, we're people that are trying to help you, and yet you're fucking us off, and we're trying to encourage you to go somewhere else, to save your life, and you're refusing to do it." We get all those moments.
I think as well, like these films probably also influenced the actual Yakuza in real life. I think seeing these films in the 70s probably somewhat influenced them, because, you know, like we have people like Scarface, Goodfellas, and that is influential, you know, beyond just the regular audience. You know, the people in the mafia will have seen them, and, you know, people in organized crime will have seen them, and then been influenced like that. I think, you know, Riccio is probably up there, because they're like, yeah, what a badass, what an amazing guy. Like a lot of people, I remember watching like the Scarface DVD, and they've got all these rappers going like, oh yeah, I love Scarface, get the yayo, he's proper gangster and all this. And you're like, yeah, it's a good film, it's entertaining, but you're missing the fucking point.
Scarface, when they had like the resurgence of it in the 90s and early noughties, obviously with the prevalence of DVD, it literally became like almost like a piece of foundation material for, you know, certain aspects of gang culture, and even in music as well. Like references in music, you hear it all the time. From you know, rap albums. I think even like Eminem bloody references at some point. You know, so you see like the references are on the nose in that regard, and you get it with these as well. Yeah,
so, and I think again, like these films did change what Yakuza cinema was, what Yakuza film was. I think from there you see Takashi Miike and Takeshi Kitano, I'm going to talk about as well later in the month. You know, you can see that influence has come on and shifted and changed with these new voices and this new direction. You know, it's like you've added an extra layer to how they can be perceived and depicted on film. Yeah, I would give the acting to Graveyard as well. Again, we have more time with that character. We have an hour and a half with that character. We only have an hour with Shizo in Battles. Yeah. So, you know, and again, he goes away for half an hour. He comes back. You don't really care at that point.
Yeah.
Where is his journey brought him to then? Yeah. It's kind of just a massive hole in his history.
It's only in the last 10 minutes where you actually start to care about him, when he realizes that everything's just fruitless and he doesn't give a shit anymore.
Exactly. And that's too late.
Yeah.
Film's over. Like, I needed to know what was going on when he was in prison. Not even spend the whole time in prison, but at least cut back to him every now and again. Yeah. It's like living in prison, brushing his fucking teeth. I don't care. Give me something to kind of show me his, where he is.
We get it in Graveyard, where we see him in prison, like being, you know, tortured by the guards. You know, they put food on that little grate, don't they? And he goes to try to eat it, and then he just slips between the grate, and they're all laughing at him. You know, we get those little flecks. You know, he's supposed to be in prison for 10 years, and we only see like a few scenes, but we get it. We get what prison's been like for him in that bit. But the problem is, going back to the writing, is that we don't get any evidence about what that's done to him as a person coming out of it. He's just exactly the same. He still doesn't give a shit and still wants to kill people.
Yeah. Right. So next up is, so that's 2 for Graveyard. Music.
See, I honestly couldn't pick out of them. Don't know why. Honestly, don't know why. What do you think? I was going to ask you about this earlier, to be honest, and I forgot.
It's okay.
But so I honestly,
no idea.
I've kind of leaned more towards Battle because of what we get in Kill Bill, you know, those kind of references, that kind of stuff. But again, I honestly, I don't know. I can't really remember it.
Graveyard had kind of a more kind of melancholic score. It was a lot more kind of subtle and kind of. It does pick up during the action scenes, but I don't think it's quite as memorable as Battle, because the music is almost integral to every murder. Like, you get that musical cue. I can't remember how it sounds, but you get this. I want someone on YouTube just to do a supercut of all the murders from the first Battle film, because it's just be like bam, 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 dead, bam, 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 dead. You know that, and again that music being used in Kill Bill, it's a bit more. Battles has a bit more dynamism. There's a bit more excitement to it. There's a bit more like there's a bit more variation, I think, in the themes as well. Yeah. So I think purely because of the link, probably purely because of the link to Kill Bill, almost entirely, I would say Battles. Yeah. But I do think the music for Graveyard fits the tone mostly.
Yeah, fits the tone of like a haunting kind of tale, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more
just like absolute misery.
Yeah, it's a tragic tale. It's a tragedy, but for a character you don't like.
Yeah, it's just such a weird combination, isn't it? It's supposed to be a tragic film. You can't have a tragic film if you don't care about the fucking character. If you don't like the character.
Exactly right.
It's like having Romeo and Juliet as like a tragedy, yet they're just Muppets that go around robbing people and things like that. It's like, I don't care because you're evil.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are films where we have protagonists, not necessarily heroes. We do have protagonists, and and there could be entertaining stories told with those characters. You don't necessarily have to like them. They can be like Rikyo, they can be a rapist or something. They can be the most awful human being, but there's still stories you can tell.
Yeah, I mean,
even Scarface. You still you don't condone the stuff he does, or Joker. You don't condone the stuff he does, but you can kind of feel for him on some level.
Yeah. Like a really, really, really good fucking example is Natural Born Killers. They're horrible people, absolutely horrible people, but you get things in there that make you go, I think they've had something happen to them. Something's happened to them to make them become who they are. And they try. There's like small moments where they try to set things right and then just fucking kill them anyway.
No,
true romance as well. True romance. There's bits in that where you're like, you're making all the wrong decisions. You're becoming wholly unlikable, but then it brings it back. It tries to find redeeming features in all the characters.
And I think that's why true romance works. I think that's why Natural Born Killers works.
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't killed anyone since 1984. I love that scene.
Amazing scene. Well, my favorite film for good reason. Good reason. So, are you saying that you're not going to give the music any points? Are we not?
I will give it to Battle purely based on what you said about like the connective tissue, the references, how it's been referenced in later works, but it's forgettable.
I think so too. So that's 4 for Graveyard, 2 for Battle. So
it's getting interesting.
Getting close. Cinematography.
Interesting. I always forget this category. I don't know why. I always forget this category.
I have to have 5, or we just have a draw. So
yeah. Like, we haven't accomplished anything in this. But what happens? What happens if we're tracking and then you pick something and I pick the opposite? Then it would be a draw, then, wouldn't it?
I've only had one draw so far, and that was with Rasheen when we did the Rob Zombie movies, House of a Thousand Corpses and 31. That was my only, and that was down to me because I was just like, nah, I'm going to give it to the other one.
Yeah.
I could have easily given it to one, but I was like, no, I'm going to be
I remember that Rasheen was giving like really valid reasons, and you kind of went,
no, I like this one.
But okay.
I mean, yeah, I just preferred that one. Just end of the day, that was just me. But they're still good. They're still good. Watch them both. Yes, cinematography.
I'm gonna go for Graveyard. I think purely because there are those small moments where it does actually stop and it does actually sit a little while, and you get the balloons, the imagery of the balloons, and you see them tracking up. Almost like he's, looking up, following them, going, I should be up there. This should be me. Why is it not me? You get those moments. You get those moments of stillness. You get those moments of slowing it down. Like we say at the end, when the guys come in to kill him with the swords and they miss, it slows it down. You get those sort of like, this is the end for him. And then he dodges out the way really quickly and it speeds back up. It ramps back up and you get the fight. You get those little moments. And some of the shots in that are really, really good, where you've got people seeing him from a distance in amongst a crowd and you can see right the way through. You get those wonderful little shots where everyone's kind of like, what the fuck is he doing over there?
Yeah, I did like when they come in to kill him and they miss, slice the balloon and it goes up.
So really, really good image because it's like that's the last vestige, isn't it, of his control or lack of control, whatever. It's his last bit of hope, maybe. Yeah. Like, I can still do this. I can still go. And then he gets battered.
I do like, there's a lot of the shots in Graveyard where it's like you said, like in the prison, shooting up into the cage and the bowl falls down. there's a lot to like visually. I like the big standoff they have in the warehouse when they're shooting at that. That's really good. And they start just throwing the stones in, and the guy's going mental. Where's my drugs?
It's quite wide outside when they're picking up the stones and throwing it in, and then it cuts to inside, and they're literally just huddled in this corner, and the junkie guy's like trying to, come on, we need to go get some drugs, and he's like, get the fuck off me, and trying to fire out the window. So it's very compact in the warehouse. Outside it's quite spread, and you get a good, you get some decent shots.
Yeah, definitely. With battles, I think I think the issue I had with battles is that the choreography and the shots really good. That kind of makes you feel like you're in the action. You're like it's very kind of almost like the Jason Bourne type fast, frenetic, and you're like, oh shit, I might get hit by that gun, or you feel like you want to dodge or move or hide, which is really effective. I think that's probably, again, the best part of battles for me is that and that kind of feel. But when it comes to like the chatting and the talking around, sat in. It's not like Kurosawa. It's not like I can watch that gorgeous scene of everyone talking on that hilltop in Ran for ages. Yeah. But for this, I'm like, okay, just get on. But then again, I'm like, there's too much of the shooting and stuff. I need more of the kind of character stuff. But it
so
needs
weird.
to be shot. It needs to be shot in an interesting way, like all the other stuff is being shot in. This one I wasn't really that sure on, and I'm still not 100% either way, I think. I'm just like Graveyard is a lot more poetic, and it has more kind of, like you said, and I like there's kind of a lot of shots of real photos and things like mixed in, like like you said, that shot with him and the prostitute being monged out on the drugs was really effective, and it
is. It's hard work, these films.
Yeah, they are
thinking about hard work to try and not just think about like the base points that we're doing now, but like just overall, they've really hard work to discuss these films. It's been hard work to sort of narrow down bits and pieces about them. Like, obviously, we know the cultural impact and everything like that, but getting into the nitty gritty of these films has been difficult.
It's a challenge, but I'm glad I watched them to kind of educate myself.
You need this kind of discourse. We can't just have everything easy, can we? We've got to. Watching these has been like a bit of an eye opener. It's been like, okay, there are still challenging films out there from years and years ago, that people should watch and should talk about.
Like if I just brought all the movies I liked to the table, you're only getting one view of that. Like, if I brought like all my favorite cult films, but I don't want to do that because that doesn't interest me, because I'm like, as much as I could talk about all my favorite cult films, till the cows come home. I like looking for new stuff and stuff I've not heard of, and interesting stuff that we can discuss. And again, might not be something we necessarily enjoy, or might be awful films, but it's good to look at them historically and retrospectively to kind of find out.
These films have been a struggle to watch, but I've enjoyed watching them because I knew the discourse would be really good. Going through them together, like struggling to pick between the two in terms of cinematography or music, breeds good discourse.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the times with you and me, like sometimes we're on the same page, sometimes we're on the opposite page, sometimes, you might be a little bit too harsh and I might be a little too soft on the film. I'm a bit too forgiving. And then sometimes it's the other way around. And that's what I always find interesting about these kind of clone balls and stuff, and having you on as a guest about them. But I think you have convinced me with Graveyard. I think your argument for Graveyard cinematography has swayed me. But again, it's the same kind of, I don't think it's the same cinematographer necessarily.
No.
Think it might be a different guy, but
I didn't know that, to be fair.
Yeah, I didn't look that up. But yeah, I think that what you've said about Graveyard is like, I can't think of a good argument really for battles. As much as I enjoy the cinematography in that, I think I think your argument is just I've got nothing to retort with really.
No retort.
Other than I like those bits, they were all right. But I think as a whole, again, I would go with Graveyard. Okay, so 6 to Graveyard and the rest to Battle. So So last one is direction. So the same guy directed both, but which is the better directed film? I mean, again, much like our last one, doesn't really matter.
It doesn't,
at this point, but we'll decide anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be Honor. I think.
What, Graveyards?
Oh, Graveyard. Beg your pardon, because they both got Honor in the title.
Exactly. That was one of the comparisons.
I
was like, Honor. The winner is Honor. Okay, but which Honor? Which of the honors?
My Honor, because I sat through these films. I was all ready to get up and leave as well. I think Honor. Goodbye.
So it's a tie.
Thank you for playing. See you next time.
I also well that's funny because I also choose Honor. Great. No answer. Everyone's clamoring for an answer, and they're like, "We choose Honor." Okay.
Ever seen the film Cliffhanger? Well, here's a cliffhanger for you.
Dun dun dun.
Graveyard. I think Graveyard.
Yeah.
Purely because Battle feels more like it was, like I said earlier on, like it was on part of a production line, and the sheer fact that the sequels were all carted out in the space of 2 years, which is crazy, absolute crazy numbers. This one feels like it's got a bit more development to it, a bit more structure, like coordinated with the cinematography. It feels like he's settled on a story and a character that he wants to portray in a very particular way, even though there's a lot of similarities still with like the documentary style and the sheer fact that it's ramped up to 11, dropped down to 4, 5, 6, and then back up again. There's a bit more minutia in it. There's a bit more thought process.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty sure that Graveyard is the first film he did after doing all the battles.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
But like, this is the one where he went, right, I've done that. I've done that thing.
That you wanted to be able to do.
Yeah, I've done the 5 films, all in that style, all in that way, telling different stories, but I've given you what you want. I've given you what the audience wanted. They were box office successes in Japan, for good reason. They're kind of like, they were playing to that audience, that young, kind of up-and-coming audience wanted that. It's like your Fast and your Furious films, people want that.
Yeah, that's a really good way of sort of like linking it to the present, isn't it? Those films were literally like the Fast and Furious of our time. It's like they're not cheaply made,
no,
but they're carted off a production line and people lap them up. And fair enough. I do have a weird sort of like fascination with the Fast and Furious films. I don't think they're great, but I think I can watch them and not care about the plot. Don't really care about the characters. Don't really like them in particular, but for some reason I watch them.
Yeah. I've only seen one, and I kind of enjoyed it. I was like, oh, this will be shit. And I was kind of, as it was going on, I was like,
first one, great.
Yeah,
First Fast and Furious film is brilliant.
Yeah,
really, really good film. And then second one, it goes a bit more weirdly like comic booky. And then when you get to like 5, 6, it's become this grandiose action movie that literally doesn't make any sense. And they're on a runway in one of the films that's about 38 miles long, and you're like, okay. This runway doesn't exist, but never mind.
I love that you were talking about the Fast and the Furious films, and all I could hear is some boy racer in the background.
I mean, that's there you go. That's the impact on people.
Yeah,
everyone wants to be in the Fast and Furious films.
We couldn't have timed that more perfectly if we tried.
No.
What brilliant! But yeah,
cultural relevance, boys and girls.
Cultural relevance. It's all cyclical. It all comes back around. It's all
real, man. It's all real.
It's all real. So I think he actively went out of his way to tell a different story. They were probably like, we want you to do a Yakuza film. We want you you do them good. We like that. We want to make money. These are popular. Make that, but do what you want. And I think he's gone, right, this is the story I want to tell. This is the character I want to tell that story. I want to tell it in this way. Nothing like my previous films. Because like actors and directors, they get bored. They don't want to do the same thing again and again and again, over and over and over. They get bored. You artistically you'll stagnate. You want to do something different, and that's what he did, and he chose to do this. And so I have to give the direction to Graveyard as well. It's just, again, more streamlined, more straightforward. Again, I don't think the action is as well depicted, but I believe
it's more like I said, it was more like steady cam right in there amongst the action, where you can't really see what's going on too much because it's all about the craziness.
Part of me loves that, part of me likes that, and then but again, like with battles, you don't, it's just that is it really. That's the only thing I'm going there for, is just those kind of things. And again, I got bored of that because it happens so frequently that it I don't know or care. Like we've said, like it's a slasher movie, which characters come and go as quick as anything. But as unlikable as the character is in Graveyard, I still followed his story pretty succinctly. And again, like my synopsis, if you have to compare the synopsises that I've created for the synopsis, if you will.
I was going to say synopsis.
Synopsize.
Read the synopsis.
Synopsize. That one for battles is far bigger because it's far more complex and characters are going, like the one for Graveyard's tiny, really, in the grand scheme of things. Again, picked out the stuff that wasn't that important, but it's so much shorter because it's so much more streamlined, so much more simple and easy to get. And again, like you said, I don't mind reading subtitles. I don't mind having a fast-paced film, but I've got to have something that tethers me to the ground before all the madness. So Graveyard is the winner by quite a big margin, apart from one category entirely, which was only the music, really. So there you go.
I didn't see that coming, to be fair. I thought it might be a bit more tighter, but then as we've discussed it, it's kind of like revealed itself, hasn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, I never truly make my mind up until I get here and discuss it with you or somebody else, because I'm like, it's not fair to just go, this is going to win. Like I like the discussion. I like people to change my mind. I like to change other people's minds as well, if I can, and inform that decision. Again, it's like I don't really like people telling me their top 5 necessarily before we do it, because I kind of like the spontaneity of it and the realness and the surprise is, it's more genuine that way. And genuine, and like real things can happen, like the car going by and things like that. That's what I live for. Like if I'd planned that, it wouldn't have worked, but that's what I like. But so if you do subscribe to Arrow, again, lots of stuff on there. A lot of Meiko Kaji films will be talked about in Samurai Month with Lady Snowblood and Rasheen. Lots of Takeshi Kitano films, which we're going to discuss in my next podcast in Yakuza films, and then a ton of these Kinji Fukasaku ones as well. There's a lot of stuff, some great Japanese cinema on this app. Andy's going to do it. Andy's going to sign up for it.
I am, because it's so, even if you like go on there just for like bits and pieces that we've talked about or other aspects of the genre, there's so much more on there from other genres, and like we talk about the Turkish Star Wars film and things like that. There's some ridiculous stuff on there that you wouldn't think would be on there, because everyone sees like the Arrow collection as being like this, this is where the quintessential classics come into play.
Yeah.
And you've got really terrible films on there as well, which is great. It's really, really good.
Proper trashy stuff. You've got slashers on there. You've got things like Gamera, the entire Gamera franchise is on there, which is like Godzilla's, lesser known brother.
What the? I'll be checking that out.
He's like a fire breathing flying turtle. I
remember. Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so he's the kind of the GoBots to the Transformers type thing. So check that out. Loads of other great stuff, like proper dramas on there, and Swedish, international, all sorts of stuff. Great documentaries as well. It's a really good app, and absolutely get stuck in. And again, you can buy it physically as well for the most part. These films that are available on the app. If you don't want to pay for the app, you don't want to stream it, you can still buy the physical media, and eventually they will reprint or get new copies of the DVDs or Blu-rays in. So I love it. I think it's a great brand and a name, and I'm well stuck in there. And I watched Elvira the other day. I watched some other stuff as well. Just kind of get stuck in. It's comedy as well. All proper weird, wacky cult stuff, which I love. Should as good as well, but that's kind of more tailored towards the horror side of things. Been great. And
it'll work you up to getting sponsored by Arrow Player. It's going to be great. Get you there. Let's get you sponsored by Arrow Player.
I would definitely do that. I'd do all of them on the Arrow Player. But subscribe to it. Do it for a month. You get a free month. Try it out. If it's for you, you can keep it on. It's not expensive. It's not really expensive.
No, it's not.
I think it's like a fiver a month or something like that.
Yeah, some stuff like that.
Yeah, but go for it. See if you like it. I know I do. Lots of good stuff. So lots of stuff we've covered in Samurai Month. Lots of stuff we've covered in this. We'll cover in Yakuza Month as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of the kind of the artists, the writers, the directors, the actors, you name it. But this has been great, Andy. This has been a really interesting one. I've really liked getting into the nitty gritty of this one.
Struggling with it, like it's made it really, really interesting, I think, as well.
Yeah, and
really finding difficulty in talking about these films.
Yeah, but I think that's made the discussion of it, like you said, the discourse of it, so much more interesting and compelling for me. So yeah, it's been great. So as usual, Andy, you're on the social medias and you got your own YouTube channel. So
yes.
Why don't you tell people about that old thing?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Andy_reviews. Do have YouTube, Angry Andy Reviews, where I cover like movie reviews and collectible unboxings, mainly Star Wars toys, action figures, and lightsabers. But yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm on Instagram as well, but I can never remember what the Instagram thing is. But the link somewhere.
I'll tag you as always.
Still relatively new to Instagram, and I use that mainly for action figure pictures. So
yeah, I think you posted one today with was it Darth Vader and Zool?
Gozer.
Sorry, Gozer.
Yeah. Did like a little crossover event of Gozer asking Vader, "Are you a god?"
Yes.
Very simple toy photography. I don't have any expensive lighting equipment, but I just do it for a bit of fun.
It's effective. It works.
Yeah. Like I said, I've been busy the last couple of weeks, so I've kind of missed a few weeks of like doing some reviews and whatever. So I'm just trying to settle in a little bit into what I'm doing now, this new thing that I'm doing. But yeah, I'm still there. I'm still going.
Yeah, it takes a while to get used to a new career, like you said, and you've got to do all the training, and again, you've got to put that focus and that time into it. For you've got to learn everything from the ground up. So you've got to do it, and if that your YouTube falls to the side for a little bit, that's obviously more important where your income comes involved. But again, you're always welcome here. You're always welcome here to do stuff.
I appreciate it. It's always good fun. Always good fun.
We've got a lot more coming up with you this year. A lot more.
Oh yes, we do.
Got you in for Halloween. We've got you in for Christmas. So it's going to be quality. But yes, that is far in the future. But before I go, here's my social medias if you want to know. So Facebook is at Secret Balls. Twitter, it's at Dan_Balls. Instagram, it's SpiderDan Secret Balls. And when you interact, don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle. And for everything else you need to know about the podcast, swing over to SpiderDanandSecretBalls.com. But before I go, I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon. I am Jack's Musings, Paul Meller, Max Byrne, Tony Farina, and Scott Hodgson for their continuing donations. It is very much appreciated and helps Prattle World keep on turning. So thank you very much, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this one. This mass discussion of Japanese cinema, directors, Yakuza, and Fast and the Furious. We've talked around it all. But I will leave you, and I hope you look forward to the next installment of Yakuza Month. Goodbye.
Bye.